Bruce, what would you like to add?
I've written a few words. Over 30 years, I've had some thoughts about how things should go. So, the three things that have kept me campaigning: my friends, the scandal, and hope. My friends, it is our story I've tried to tell. I built the case initially, as we all did, on chats, noting not only the incongruous elements in our experiences, but the incredible similarities, which showed the coordination of events from centre to centre. The lack of honesty with patients and parents about risks, about infections, the lack of responsibility, and the attempts to avoid the reality of what was to happen by doctors and state. This is what brought us together. Friendships grew from tragedy. I remember when I last saw my friend Hayden Lewis, over a decade ago now. We had just descended en masse to Westminster, as we did. For yet another debate. He was 2 weeks from death. Bald, chemotherapy, thin, yellow, his voice was weak as thread. I remember saying, "What the fuck are you doing here, mate?" I huddled him. I gently hugged what was a frail body. He said, "I'm here to break the law. It's illegal to die in Westminster." The scandal. We built the language commonly used by all. Scandal is Hayden's. He used to say that it was important to focus on those things. The worst disaster in the history of the NHS. I'm sorry, Lord Winston, it was me that put those words into your mouth. Infected and affected was me, because we were finding it hard to describe the broader impacts. We now take for granted those words. We inherited the label campaigners, but I want... out of sequence now. We were, and those of us that still are, patients with questions. Nothing more, nothing less. The reasoned request of damned souls. We were forced by scandal to fight just to exist, forced to go to law, forced to become researchers, lobbyists, interview subjects, to declare our illness publicly in life with no good choices, just stark realities of fold or fight. Our campaign was built on decades of research and activity that once allowed me to pick up my phone book and ring a list of numbers to check my work. Now, in common with the few that are left of those true long-term battlers, I carry the weight of the lost. All those promises I made to dying comrades and friends, and that we'd carry on, and we did, and we do. So as I frequently do have to ask, what is my task now? To ensure I truly honour the fallen, those ghosts of friends, those irretractable promises that I would see the fight through to the end. Hope. I have hope for this inquiry. First, there is a need for appropriate memorials. I feel that the inquiry's report must be crowned by the unveiling of memorials in each of the UK's capital cities, in a place of prominence, supported by governments willing to acknowledge responsibility for, in the most traditional way, a formal recognition of apology to those whom they did not give justice to in life. Secondly, there is a need for support. We must ensure that those who are left are supported in the most complete way possible to enable them to take full control of their lives and make the best they can of what they have left in the most complete terms. Families of the living and the dead have been made victims too by the state treatment of their loved ones. As things stand, the state bears a responsibility to make good the damages and losses, and no one should be worse off at the end of decent compensation process. But ultimately, how do we make sense of such death and suffering on an industrial scale? Well, thirdly, there needs for recognition, in my view, that can only come from significant change in how we understand the concept of pioneers within medicine. And that needs to change to the patient being the pioneer. It is only the patient and his loved ones that will truly suffer medical failure. This must be recognised. All new medicines must have compensation rights automatically written into them. Any trials should automatically be insured. Funds should be established to make sure those responsible for medical products, be they the state or commercial entities, can be held liable and will have the money for all losses created, without having to plunder medical budgets or decimate other people's lives in return. It should not be a trade-off. Fourthly, there needs to be honest incentives for honest disclosure of adverse events from the individual practitioner whose mistakes should be learnt from, but also disclosed in order to inform teaching and the practices of others to drug companies who may need more punitive encouragement. We need a system where doctors can declare their mistakes. Maybe it will cost them retraining, limitations in their practice, but honestly should not be seen primarily as a threat to end a career, but as a means to improve and inform practice across the profession. Dishonesty can only, and certainly has, immeasurably compound harms caused in such events. Fifthly, we need to protect the children. In the long-term conditions like haemophilia, the child must be enabled thoroughly by being offered the broadest possible support, from genetic assessment beyond the headline conditions. The dramatic haemophilia, frequently they miss the autism, the heart disease, the other things. Child development must be a feature. Stronger nursing positions must be a feature. Physio, occupational therapy, psychological support, social work, educational input tailored to the needs of each child so that the medical burden is answered with possibility of empowerment. Finally, I want to end by offering this most public of apology to my wife and children. No family should ever see their husband or father dig a trench in the front living room and go to war with the state. But I have hope of a ladder from my trench to mental peace. I can only hope you understand. I had to stand for those who fell or are falling, my comrades, my friends, my blood brothers, my sisters. I commend my work to the inquiry and hope it continues to be to the fullest understanding. I hope it contributes to the fullest understanding of the simplest of questions. What were haemophiliacs for? Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Sir Brian.
Some things which I have to thank you for, I think, are obvious. First of all, you've come from Scotland here to give evidence in person when you could have sought to give it remotely. And I think that's just part of your campaigning style. But you've given it despite, as came out in the evidence, you're suffering pain, and you told us you're very not well.
Yeah.
So that, I think, deserves particular recognition on its own. But more than that, you call yourself a lobbyist, perhaps, given your remarks at the end, a reluctant one, but felt obliged to be so. And you've given us, as a lobbyist, what I've taken from it is a very clear plea for looking at the whole picture, looking at everything holistically, starting off with a broad view of history and setting what happened in the 70s and 80s in a much broader historical context, in seeing systems, in seeing links, in seeing people with haemophilia as not, or with infection, not as being isolated, but as people who have families, who have contacts, who have lives to live, who may infect others as a result, whose illness cannot be confined within the envelope of HCV because there are co-infections, there are other infections, so on. You've made a plea for clinicians not to operate as silos, but to take a holistic view of medicine and to take a broad view of science, to look broadly at all viruses. And at the very end, again, I think your plea for breadth in everything has come about by the way you've been able to speak of the recognition that you look for those who have suffered in all ways, in all of the home nations. And I just want to thank you for that. You've made those points in very much your own style, but I won't forget them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.